The safe weighed as much as the lie. Lorraine slid it across the table like a party favor and said, "Your share is inside." 3 million vanished on paper. My name disappeared from the trust the same week. I smiled, thanked her for the gift, and installed 2 cameras facing the safe. By Thanksgiving, the family would watch me open it and watch her whole operation crack with the lid. My name is Ava Harding, and I learned that grief makes people careless with paperwork the week my grandmother died. The funeral home smelled like lilies and furniture polish. I'd been awake for 36 hours, straight back-to-back trauma shifts at Riverside Meridian before racing here in scrubs I'd changed in the parking lot. My fingers still smelled like antiseptic under the borrowed black dress. Lorraine Beckett, my mother-in-law, sat in the front row wearing pearls that caught the light like tears she wasn't crying. "Such a loss," she murmured to anyone listening. Helen was family to all of us. Helen was my grandmother, the last Harding matriarch, the woman who raised me after my parents died, who mortgaged her house twice to put me through nursing school, who built a $3 million portfolio from decades of 12-hour factory shifts and aggressive index fund investing that Lorraine called quaint at last year's Christmas dinner. The will reading happened 3 days later. Straightforward everything to me, her only grandchild. 3 million in diversified assets, administered through an executor originally Helen's attorney, now mysteriously substituted with a compliance update dated the day I pulled a double covering for 2 nurses out with flu. Lorraine had filed the paperwork herself. The handwritten date correction in blue ink. The new bank name, Crescent State Bank, on trust notices that arrived looking too fresh, too convenient. "Just a formality," Lorraine assured everyone at her pre-Thanksgiving brunch 2 weeks later. The dining room of the Beckett house gleamed with the kind of old money perfection that photographed well, but creaked when you looked closer. Daniel, my husband, kept refilling wine glasses like a nervous waiter. His cousins Tripp and Madison exchanged smirks over their mimosas. "Your inheritance is secure, dear." Lorraine pushed an antique safe across the mahogany table. The metal scraped against wood with a sound like fingernails on slate. "This holds your grandmother's letters, some heirlooms. The money will vest later, after the compliance hold." The safe was beautiful in that calculated way. Brass corners, a dial that belonged in a museum, heavy enough that Lorraine needed both hands to move it. No key visible. "The combination," she said, "would come when the time was right." I lifted it carefully. Something shifted inside paper sliding against metal, thick as wire transfer instructions. How thoughtful. I kept my voice hospital calm, the tone I used with combative patience. "And the trustee documentation, being updated." She waved manicured fingers. "Crescent State Bank has new KYC requirements. Know your customer such a fuss these days?" Daniel's foot found mine under the table. A warning or solidarity. I couldn't tell anymore. 3 years of marriage, and I still couldn't read whether his silences meant agreement or surrender. I pocketed every envelope stub, photographed the serial numbers etched into the safe's base while pretending to admire the craftsmanship. Lorraine watched me like a cat tracking a bird through glass patient, certain the window would open eventually. "We're grateful," Daniel said, filling the silence I left. "Mom knows what she's doing with estates." 30 years in charitable giving, Lorraine added. "I've moved millions for good causes." The cousins nodded along. Tripp made a joke about nurse money versus real money that landed like a scalpel between my ribs. I smiled, filed it away with the other cuts I'd been collecting. After coffee, after the performance of family unity, I drove home with the safe in my trunk, feeling its weight shift on every turn. In my apartment, I set it on the kitchen table where the afternoon light hit the brass. Alone, finally. I tilted it forward. That sliding sound again. Paper against metal. Yes, but also something else. A USB drive maybe, or a key taped inside. Documents that mattered enough to lock away, but not enough to destroy. I thought about the handwritten date on the executor substitution form. The day I'd been elbow deep in a trauma case, trying to save a teenager who'd wrapped his car around a telephone pole, the exact 12-hour window when I couldn't have contested anything. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Mom's really trying to help. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I photographed his message, added it to a folder I'd started labeled Thanksgiving. Then I ran my fingers along the safe's edges, feeling for imperfections, for gaps in the story Lorraine was selling. $3 million doesn't just vanish. It leaves traces, wire transfers, tax documents, signatures. It creates obligations and opportunities. And sometimes, if you're very careful and very patient, it exposes exactly who's been moving it and why. The safe sat on my table like a question. By Thanksgiving, I'd make sure everyone heard the answer. The graveyard shift at Riverside Meridian runs from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. Perfect time for reconstructing financial crimes. I printed every Crescent State Bank auto email from the past month, spreading them across the break room table like evidence. KYC updates required. Beneficiary verification in progress. Account structure modification completed. Each one time-stamped during my doubles, my trauma shifts, my mandatory overtime covering the nursing shortage. The pattern was surgical in its precision. Lorraine had mapped my schedule somehow, probably through Daniel's shared calendar, and filed every change while I was wrist-deep in someone else's emergency. "You look like you're planning a murder," Maya Ortiz said from the doorway. Maya worked forensic bookkeeping by day, Uber driving by night to pay for her mother's dialysis. We'd met 6 months ago when she brought her mom through my ER with chest pains that turned out to be anxiety about medical bills. I fast-tracked the imaging. She taught me how money actually moves. Just following paper. I showed her the timeline. "My mother-in-law's been busy." Maya whistled low. "Shell game." $3 million worth? She pulled up a chair, fingers already flying across her phone. "Send me everything. I'll run it through my databases between rides." By 4 in the morning, Maya had found them Beckett Community Heritage, Willow Ridge Charitable Home, Sunset Gardens Foundation. 3 LLCs registered to 3 different P.O. boxes, all paid for with the same credit card, all listing Lorraine as advisory consultant in the fine print. "These aren't charities," Maya explained, showing me the registration documents. "They're holding companies dressed up like nonprofits. See this?" She pointed to a line item. "Grant staging, that's code for parking money before moving it offshore." My phone buzzed. "Daniel." "Where are you?" Mom called. "She's worried about you." I screenshot the message, added it to my folder, then pulled up our shared email account. There it was. Dated last month, Daniel had forwarded my original trust notification email to Lorraine with a note. "Can you help with this? Ava's overwhelmed with work." My hands stayed steady. Years of threading IVs into collapsed veins teaches you that, but something cold settled in my chest. Not surprise exactly. Recognition, maybe, of a betrayal I'd been pretending not to see. "Your husband's in on it?" Maya asked, reading over my shoulder. "He's in something, might just be denial." She pulled up another screen. "You need to see this. There's a scheduled transaction for Thanksgiving Day, $2.6 million, tagged as a charitable disbursement from Willow Ridge to something called Haven International. That's the Caymans." I know. Every nurse knows where doctors hide their malpractice settlement money. Once it moves there, it's gone. You've got 10 days. 10 days to prove fraud, freeze assets, and serve papers on a woman who'd been moving money since before I was born. 10 days while working full shifts, maintaining a marriage to her son, and pretending I didn't know about any of it. I texted Daniel back, "Just finishing my shift. Tell your mom everything's fine." Maya started building a flowchart on her laptop, connecting the shells to the bank to the scheduled transfer. Each line represented a transaction, each box a legal entity designed to obscure the truth. But patterns don't lie, even when people do. "She's good," Maya admitted. "This would pass a surface audit, but not a deep one. Nothing passes a deep audit if you know where to look." She highlighted a cluster of transfers. These all happened within hours of each other. Same amounts, just bouncing between entities. That's velocity layering, making money move so fast it looks like more than it is. By 6:45. As the morning shift started arriving, we had it mapped. Every dollar's journey from my grandmother's trust through Lorraine's maze and toward that Thanksgiving transfer. "What are you going to do?" Maya asked. I thought about the safe sitting on my kitchen table, about Daniel's forwarded email, about Lorraine's manicured fingers sliding it across her mahogany table like she was dealing cards in a game, only she knew we were playing. "I'm going to need a lawyer. A forensic accountant, and probably a new lock on my apartment door." Maya packed up her laptop. "I know someone at Halloway and Ridge, young partner, hungry for a righteous case. Sloan Everly. Want me to call? After I work one more shift. I need to document everything first." "You mean you need to figure out if your husband's complicit or just stupid?" I didn't answer. Some diagnoses you don't make until all the tests come back. Walking to my car in the morning light, I felt the exhaustion of the night shift mixing with something sharper. Not anger exactly. Anger was too hot, too quick. This was colder, more patient, the kind of feeling that could wait 10 days, could smile at family dinners, could gather evidence like a nurse chart symptoms. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Lorraine, 2 from Daniel, and 1 text from an unknown number. "Ms. Harding, this is Crescent State Bank. Please call regarding your recent beneficiary status inquiry." I hadn't made any inquiry. The game was accelerating. Good. The faster Lorraine moved, the more mistakes she'd make. And I'd be there, documenting everyone, building a case as carefully as she'd built her theft. 10 days to Thanksgiving. 10 days to turn her own trap inside out. "Don't shame the family before the holiday." Lorraine delivered this like a commandment, standing in my living room at 7 in the morning. Uninvited. She wore cream cashmere and carried a leather folder that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "I wasn't planning to shame anyone," I said, not moving from my doorway, not inviting her further in. "Good." She set the folder on my coffee table with practiced authority. "Then you'll sign this gratitude agreement. It simply states that you're thankful for the family's guidance in managing Helen's estate." The document was 3 pages of legal language that boiled down to shut up. Accept what you're given. Don't ask questions. A non-disclosure agreement dressed in Thanksgiving sentiment. "I'll need to read it first." "Of course. Take until tomorrow. Daniel said you've been working doubles again." Her eyes swept my apartment, cataloging. "You must be exhausted, making poor decisions." 2 hours later, at Riverside Meridian, I was writing up Dr. Harrison for nearly killing a patient with the wrong dosage of heparin. Basic math error that would have caused a brain bleed if I hadn't caught it. He cornered me in the supply closet afterward. "You sure you want to file that report? Harding heard your mother-in-law knows people on the board." The threat was so naked it was almost refreshing. Patient safety isn't negotiable. "Neither is your job." By noon, I was in the administrator's office, facing a professionalism review that materialized with suspicious speed. Someone had called about my erratic behavior and concerning stress levels. The administrator, Kenneth Zhao, kept glancing at his phone like he was reading from a script. "Perhaps you should take some time off," he suggested. "Through the holidays. Paid, of course." "That's very generous, but I'm fine." It wasn't a suggestion. Administrative leave, effective immediately. 9 days before Thanksgiving. 9 days when I'd have nothing but time to focus on Lorraine's theft. If she thought she was boxing me in, she'd miscalculated. A nurse without shifts is a dangerous thing, all that trained attention with nowhere medical to direct it. Daniel was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his Audi like a man about to deliver worse news. "You need to sign Mom's agreement," he said without preamble. "Did you know she was going to get me suspended?" Suspended? His surprise seemed genuine, but I'd seen him fake sincerity with difficult clients before. "Mom said she was worried about you. Said you've been paranoid about the inheritance." "The inheritance she's stealing." "Jesus, Ava." He ran his hands through his hair. "She's trying to help. The money's complicated. There are tax implications. Name one." "What? Name one specific tax implication." He stared at me, and for a moment I saw him clearly not the man I'd married, but the boy who'd been raised by Lorraine, trained from birth to never question where money came from or where it went, only to be grateful it existed. "Sign the agreement," he said finally. "Keep the peace. We'll get something later. You'll get what's yours. Mom just needs time to structure it properly." That night, I moved the safe from my kitchen to my bedroom closet, then thought better of it. Too obvious. I called Maya. "Bring your car," I said, "and a dolly if you have one." We loaded the safe into her trunk at 11:30 at night, both of us grunting with the effort. "Where to?" she asked. "Back to where it came from, Lorraine's study." "I'm returning her gift with gratitude." Maya laughed. "You're insane." "I'm prepared. There's a difference." Before we left, I installed 2 cameras in my apartment, one facing the door, one covering the windows. Small, wireless, uploading to the cloud. At 2:13 in the morning, they captured exactly what I expected someone jimmying my lock with professional tools. The figure was backlit, face obscured, but the hand that reached for the doorknob had a distinctive French manicure with a chip on the index finger, the same manicure Lorraine had been sporting at her gratitude visit. She didn't enter the deadbolt I'd added that afternoon, stopped her. But intent matters in court. Attempted breaking and entering, even without successful entry, establishes a pattern of behavior. The next morning, I sat in Sloane Everly's office at Halloway and Ridge, watching her review everything Maya and I had compiled. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of focused intensity that meant she'd grown up proving herself to people who underestimated her. "The trustee substitution is sketchy," she said. "The shells are obvious once you look. But this," she held up the screenshot of the lock-picking attempt, "this is gift-wrapped evidence of consciousness of guilt. Can you freeze the assets? With an ex parte application for a temporary restraining order based on executor misconduct." "Absolutely. The question is timing." "Thanksgiving morning," I said, before the scheduled transfer. Sloane smiled. "You want to serve her at dinner. I want to serve her with an audience. The whole family watching. That's either brilliant or psychotic. It's necessary. Lorraine's built her entire life on appearances. The only way to beat her is to make the truth impossible to hide." My phone buzzed. "Daniel, Mom's worried you haven't signed the agreement." "Family meeting tonight at 7. Please come." I showed Sloane the text. "Looks like I'm expected somewhere. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and document everything." "I'm a nurse," I said. "Documentation is what we do." That evening, walking into Lorraine's dining room felt like entering an operating theater. Everything arranged for maximum effect: the lights, the staging, the audience of cousins and aunts gathered to witness my capitulation. The safe sat in the corner of the room, polished and prominent. "We're so glad you returned it," Lorraine said, not missing a beat. "Family heirlooms should stay in the family home." She'd already incorporated it into her narrative. Every move I made, she had a counter-story ready, but stories are only as good as their evidence. And I was building mine document by document, timestamp by timestamp, lie by carefully cataloged lie. Sloane Everly's office smelled like fresh coffee and old law books. She'd cleared her entire morning for what she called the good fight, 3 hours of building an airtight case for an ex parte application. "Executor misconduct is serious," she explained, arranging documents like surgical instruments. "Judges don't freeze $3 million without cause. But this," she spread out Maya's flowcharts, "this is cause with a capital C. We had the shell companies mapped, the velocity layering documented, the scheduled Thanksgiving transfer highlighted in yellow. But Sloane wanted more. She wanted human stories. Your grandmother. Tell me about her." I pulled out Helen's letters. Saved in a shoebox I'd grabbed during the apartment search Lorraine didn't know I knew about. One from my nursing school graduation. "Compassion over appearances, always. Money is just paper until it helps someone heal." Another from when I got engaged. "That boy's mother smiles like she's pricing furniture. Watch her carefully." Helen had seen Lorraine coming years ago. "Perfect," Sloane said. "Now, we need to show the judge that Lorraine knew exactly what she was doing. The consciousness of guilt." That's when I remembered the codicil drafts. 3 weeks before Helen died, she'd been revising her will. I'd driven her to the lawyer's office twice, but she'd said the changes were minor. Now I wondered, can we subpoena the drafts? Not in time, but if you have copies? I called Helen's attorney's paralegal, Diane, who'd sent flowers to the funeral. Sometimes grief makes people want to help. "I shouldn't do this," Diane said when I met her at a Starbucks downtown. "But Helen was specific about you. She kept saying Ava's reliable. Ava won't let them take it." The drafts were revealing. Helen had tried to add language preventing trustee substitution without written beneficiary consent. She'd wanted to specify that all charitable donations required my approval. The final version had neither provision. "Someone convinced her these weren't necessary," Diane said quietly. "Someone who came to our office the day Helen had her stroke." "Lorraine." I couldn't say, but whoever it was knew exactly which clauses to target. Maya, meanwhile, had cultivated her own source, a compliance officer at Crescent State Bank who went to her mother's church. Anonymous tip line plus a concerned citizen's inquiry had yielded interesting information. "The Haven International transfer isn't their first," Maya reported over encrypted message. "Lorraine's moved 4 other estates through the same pathway. Always holidays, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, when banks are short-staffed and oversight is light." I met the compliance officer myself, officially visiting the branch as a confused beneficiary, seeking clarity about my trust. She couldn't tell me anything directly, but she could leave papers on her desk while she went to check on something for 15 minutes. The papers showed 5 estates, 4 already drained, mine scheduled to be the 5th. Total value moved $12.3 million, all to Haven International. All technically legal if you didn't look too close at the nonprofit status of the shell companies. But we were looking close, with a microscope. The police report was easier than expected. Ring footage of attempted entry, filed at the local precinct at 8 in the morning with a detective who'd seen enough family theft to recognize the pattern. "Not seeking prosecution at this time," I said carefully. "Just need the incident documented." "Smart." Detective Morrison nodded. "Paper trail first, handcuffs later if necessary." She assigned a case number, took copies of the footage, noted the distinctive manicure. Everything time-stamped, official, admissible. By Wednesday night, we had 37 exhibits organized in a binder thick as a medical textbook, each tabbed, indexed, cross-referenced. The judge would see not just theft, but systematic, premeditated conversion of trust assets. "The ex parte hearing is set for Wednesday before Thanksgiving," Sloane confirmed. 8 in the morning. If granted, we can serve the freeze order immediately. Effective when judge's discretion. But given the scheduled transfer, I'll push for immediate effect. Thanksgiving morning at the latest. I spent Thursday organizing service. 3 process servers on retainer 1 for Lorraine at home, 1 for the bank, 1 for the registered agents of the Shell LLCs, plus e-service to back up physical delivery. "You're thorough," Sloane observed. "In the ER, thorough saves lives. This isn't different." That evening, Daniel found me adding a 3rd camera to our apartment setup, this one hidden in a fake smoke detector. "You're paranoid," he said. "Your mother tried to break in Tuesday night." "That's ridiculous." I showed him the footage. His face went through stages: disbelief, recognition, anger, then something worse, resignation. "She's just worried about you," he said finally. "She's worried about getting caught. Caught doing what managing money, making sure it's protected." "Is that what she told you?" He looked at me then with an expression I recognized from patients' families the moment they realize the diagnosis is worse than they'd let themselves believe. "The safe," he said slowly. "She really wants to know what's in it." "I bet she does." "What is in it?" "The truth. Want to see." He backed away like I'd offered him something contaminated. "I need to think." He left that night, went to his mother's. I changed the locks again, added a door brace, Set all 3 cameras to motion-activated recording. Then I called Sloan. He might warn her, Sloan said. Let him. The more she scrambles, the more evidence we collect. Friday morning's mail brought a cease and desist letter from Lorraine's personal attorney. I was to stop harassing bank officials, stop spreading defamatory information, and return any trust documents in my possession. Sloan laughed when I forwarded it. She's scared. This is good. Saturday. The family group text started. Cousins asking if I was okay. Aunts suggesting therapy might help. Trip making jokes about when nurses attack. A coordinated campaign to establish me as unstable before Thursday's dinner. I responded to each with variations of, looking forward to Thanksgiving. Can't wait to share grandmother's gifts with everyone. Let them wonder what gifts. Let Lorraine lose sleep over what Helen might have left in that safe besides money. By Monday, everything was ready. Sloan had the brief polished, the judge briefed through chambers, the service strategy mapped. Maya had backup documentation in 3 different cloud services. I had cameras covering every angle of my life. Plus, one more surprise, a 4th camera. Tiny as a button, sewn into the vintage dress I'd wear to Thanksgiving dinner. You're recording dinner, Maya asked. Every single word. Lorraine thinks she controls the narrative, but stories change when everyone can see the evidence. Wednesday morning, we'd go before the judge. Wednesday afternoon, we'd serve papers. Thursday morning, the freeze would bite. Thursday afternoon, in front of the entire family, the safe would open. Timing, as any ER nurse knows, is everything. Too early and you lose the element of surprise. Too late and the patient bleeds out. We had it calibrated to the minute. Now all we needed was the judge's signature and Lorraine's hubris to hold steady for 3 more days. Thanksgiving Eve at the Beckett house arrived wrapped in wet wool coats and forced cheer. The dining room gleamed with the kind of aggressive polish that suggested Lorraine had spent the day commanding her housekeeper like a general before battle. I arrived alone. Daniel had been staying here since our conversation about the safe. He greeted me at the door with a kiss that felt like an apology for something he hadn't said yet. Mom's in rare form, he whispered. Just try to get through dinner. The family had assembled in force, Trip holding court by the bar, Madison documenting everything for Instagram, aunts and uncles whose names I'd never bothered learning because they only appeared for money or gossip. The safe sat in Lorraine's study, visible through the open door like a museum piece. Ava. Lorraine glided over in burgundy silk that probably cost more than most people's rent. So glad you could join us. We were just discussing the family's charitable commitments. She guided me to the dining room where brochures were fanned across the table like tarot cards. Beckett Community Heritage, Willow Ridge Charitable Home, Sunset Gardens Foundation. All her shells, printed on heavy cardstock with stock photos of smiling seniors and grateful children. We preserve wealth to preserve legacy, she announced to the room. This year alone, we'll be moving nearly $3 million to these wonderful causes. My grandmother's $3 million. But I smiled and studied the brochures. The EIN numbers were real, I'd verified that, but the fonts were wrong, mismatched between documents, like someone had typed them on different computers at different times. The kind of detail a nurse notices after years of spotting forged prescriptions. How wonderful, I said, pocketing one of each. And these donations happen tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. Lorraine's smile could have cut glass. The banks process charity transfers even on holidays. Isn't that lovely? Cousin Trip wandered over, bourbon in hand. Must be nice, handling real money instead of bedpans. Right, Ava. Oh, I handle both, I said pleasantly. You'd be surprised how similar they are. Same amount of shit, different containers. Madison choked on her wine. Trip's face went red. Lorraine's smile never wavered. Ava's sense of humor, she said to the room, is so medical. Dinner was a marathon of passive aggression disguised as small talk. The turkey was dry as accusations, the stuffing heavy with unspoken threats. Lorraine held court from the head of the table, weaving stories about Helen that somehow always diminished her. "Dear Helen," she said, raising her glass, "always so careful with money, counting pennies while missing opportunities. Thank goodness she trusted us to maximize her legacy." "To Helen," everyone echoed. I raised my water glass, my hand steady despite the rage climbing my spine. "To receipts," I said quietly. Daniel shot me a warning look. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "Speaking of receipts," she continued smoothly, "I've been organizing Helen's papers. So many documents, some quite personal. Letters about family struggles, financial difficulties, things that might embarrass if they became public." The threat was clear. She thought she had leverage old letters about my parents' debts, maybe, or Helen's early poverty, as if shame about struggle could override theft of millions. "Helen was never embarrassed by truth," I said. "She used to say honesty was the only wealth that couldn't be stolen." How quaint. Lorraine turned to the rest of the table. "Did everyone see the parade footage they're predicting snow for tomorrow's festivities?" The conversation shifted to weather, football, anything but the money we were all thinking about. I excused myself to the bathroom, took 30 seconds of video on my phone, the layout, the exits, the study where the safe waited. When I returned, Lorraine was showing everyone her phone. "The shelter is so grateful for tomorrow's donation. Look, they've already posted a thank you." A Facebook post from Haven House, a real shelter in Philadelphia that I'd verified had no connection to Haven International. Another layer of the con, using a legitimate charity's name to confuse any surface-level investigation. "That's wonderful," I said. "Will they be sending representatives to the transfer?" "Oh no, we handle everything electronically. So much more efficient." "Of course." Madison pulled out her phone. "Should we do a family photo for the memories?" We arranged ourselves around Lorraine's chair, everyone smiling except me and Daniel, who looked like he might vomit. The flash went off just as Lorraine placed her hand on my shoulder, nails digging in slightly. "Family is everything," she said to the room, "and family protects family." After dessert pecan pie that tasted like sawdust, Lorraine cornered me in the kitchen. "The agreement," she said. "Daniel says you haven't signed." "I've been busy. Too busy for family. Too busy documenting fraud." The word hung between us like a blade. Lorraine's face went very still. "That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. This is bigger than your little inheritance." "You're right. It's about 12.3 million bigger, spanning 5 estates." Her composure cracked for just a second, a flash of genuine surprise before reforming. "You should be very careful," she said. "Nurses can lose their licenses for mental instability. Marriages can end over misunderstandings. Reputations can be destroyed by whispers." "Is that a threat?" "It's a kindness. Sign the agreement. Take what you're given, or lose everything." I pulled out my phone, pretended to check the time, but actually confirmed it was still recording. "We'll see tomorrow, won't we?" Walking back through the dining room, I stopped at the study door. The safe sat on a side table, practically split like an art installation. "It really is beautiful," I said to the room. "Can't wait to see what's inside." "Soon enough," Lorraine replied, "though I believe I've misplaced the combination." "Such a shame." "Oh, I wouldn't worry," I said. "Daniel has the key." The room went quiet. Daniel's face drained of color. Lorraine's eyes snapped to her son. "What key?" she asked softly. "The one he's been carrying since our wedding," I said. "For tradition, right Beckett family tradition, the son holds the key to the family fortune." It wasn't true, there was no key, just a combination, but Lorraine didn't know that. And now she'd spend the entire night pressing Daniel for something that didn't exist, fracturing their united front right before tomorrow's performance. I kissed Daniel's cheek, whispered, "Choose carefully," in his ear, and left. The drive home through empty streets felt like the quiet before a code blue. Everything about to change, alarms about to sound, everyone about to see what had been hiding in plain sight. Tomorrow morning at 9, Lorraine would try to move my inheritance. At 9:04, she'd discover the freeze. By dinner, with the entire family watching, we'd open that safe and let the evidence speak louder than her lies had ever managed. The truth, as Helen used to say, was the only wealth that couldn't be stolen. And tomorrow, I was going to make everyone rich with it. Thanksgiving morning broke gray and cold at 5:45. I was already dressed, court documents organized in 3 separate folders, phone charged, cameras recording. The plan required military precision. Serve Lorraine, serve the bank, serve the shell companies, all before 9 o'clock. Sloan met me at her office at 6:30. The process server, a former cop named Rodriguez, was already there, studying the addresses. 3 stops, Sloan explained. Lorraine Beckett at home, Crescent State Bank's registered agent, and the Shell LLC's registered address downtown. I'll handle e-service as backup. What about the bank manager? I asked. Already served last night at his home. He wasn't happy, but he accepted it. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Mom's acting strange. She keeps asking about a key. What did you do? I showed Sloan the text. She smiled. Psychological warfare. Nice. She'll be off balance, exhausted from interrogating him all night. Perfect state for being served. Rodriguez left at 7:15 to position himself outside Lorraine's house. The bank's registered agent was next a law firm downtown that would be open for holiday skeleton crew. The Shell's registered address turned out to be a UPS store, but legal service to a mailbox would suffice. Meanwhile, Lorraine was texting Daniel frantically. I could see the messages on our shared iPad at home. Bring the safe to the bank. We need to move the timeline. Where is the key? At 8:43, Rodriguez called. Served. She tried to refuse, but I got her on video accepting it. She looked rough. The bank confirmation came at 8:51. Freeze acknowledged. Sloan read from her email. All accounts associated with the trust are on hold pending judicial review. 8:57. Lorraine would be entering her credentials now, trying to initiate the transfer. 9:02. My phone rang. Unknown number. What did you do? Lorraine's voice was raw, stripped of its usual polish. I protected my inheritance. You have no idea what you've cost me. What you've cost this family. I know exactly. $3 million of my grandmother's money. That money was structured, allocated. There are obligations. To fake charities to offshore accounts. Silence. Then, you're going to regret this. See you at dinner. She hung up. 2 minutes later, Daniel called. Mom's having some kind of breakdown. She's on the phone with lawyers, screaming about overrides and emergency protocols. Where are you? Still at her house. Ava. What's happening? The truth. Finally. I could hear Lorraine in the background, her voice climbing. Find another judge, I don't care if it's Thanksgiving. She's trying to get an emergency override. Sloan explained when I relayed the conversation. She won't find a judge willing to reverse our freeze on a holiday. Not with the evidence we presented. By noon, I was back in my apartment, watching the parade on TV while monitoring my cameras. The one facing the safe in Lorraine's study showed interesting activity. She'd been in there 3 times, standing in front of it, phone pressed to her ear. At 2 in the afternoon, the family group text exploded. Lorraine, dinner moved to 4 o'clock, don't be late. Moving up dinner meant she was planning something. Maybe trying to prevent the safe opening, or controlling the narrative before I could act. I arrived at 3:45 with Maya, who I'd introduced as my friend from work. Sloan was already there, having been invited as Daniel's colleague who had nowhere else to go for Thanksgiving. We'd planned this witnesses who weren't family, who could testify to what they saw. The house smelled like burnt turkey and desperation. Lorraine had changed into severe black, her face made up but unable to hide the exhaustion underneath. Daniel looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Ava, Lorraine said coldly, how nice of you to bring friends. Family isn't just blood, I replied. Sometimes it's people who show up when truth matters. The dining room was only half set, the meal clearly rushed. The safe had been moved to the corner, partially hidden behind a potted plant. Lorraine was trying to make it invisible. "Shall we eat?" she said, but I stepped forward. "Actually, I thought we might handle family business first. While everyone's here?" "This isn't the time. You scheduled a 9 transfer for today. That makes it exactly the time." The cousins looked confused. The aunts whispered. Trip, already 3 drinks in, laughed. "Drama before turkey. I love this family." I pulled out my phone, set it to record, placed it on the table facing the room. "For the memories," I said, echoing Madison's words from last night. Lorraine's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the back of a chair. "If you have something to say, say it." "I'd rather show everyone." I walked to the safe, lifted the plant aside. "Daniel, would you open this, please? I don't have—" "The combination is your birthday backward," I said. "Your mother's password for everything." It was a guess, but an educated one based on the passwords I'd seen her enter on other devices. Daniel looked at his mother, who'd gone very pale. "Don't," she said quietly, but he was already turning the dial. The click of tumblers falling into place sounded like bullets loading. The safe opened. Inside, everything we'd planted over the past week, but on top, something new, a manila envelope with Lorraine's handwriting, investment restructuring documents. She'd added her own evidence to our trap. "What is this?" Daniel pulled out the envelope, opened it. Wire transfer receipts, account statements, all showing movement of money from Helen's trust to the Shells. And at the bottom, a single page that made everything clear, a loan document. Lorraine had borrowed against the inheritance as collateral, promising delivery of $3 million to a private lender by end of business today. "You borrowed against money that wasn't yours." Daniel's voice cracked. "It was a bridge loan," Lorraine said desperately, "to maintain our position, the house, the cars, your lifestyle." "Built on theft," I said quietly. Maya stepped forward, laptop already open. "Should I show them the flowchart?" "What flowchart?" Madison asked. On the screen, every dollar's journey, every shell company, every fake charity, all leading to Haven International, and at the bottom, 5 other estates, already drained using the same method. 12.3 million, I said to the room. Stolen from 5 families including mine. The silence was complete. Even Tripp had stopped smiling. Sloane cleared her throat. "The court has frozen all accounts associated with these transactions. The FBI will be interested in the interstate wire fraud implications." "FBI." Lorraine's voice barely existed. "Did you think it would stay civil?" I asked. "You stole from the dead." The room erupted. Aunts demanding explanations. Cousins on their phones, probably Googling wire fraud sentences. Madison recording everything for what would definitely not make it to Instagram. In the chaos, Daniel stood perfectly still, staring at his mother like he was seeing her for the first time. "The house," he asked quietly. "Mortgaged," she admitted. "The cars, leased, my trust fund." Her silence was answer enough. He turned to me, and I saw it in his eyes, not just anger or betrayal, but a kind of relief. Finally, an explanation for all the things that hadn't quite made sense. The urgent family meetings, the constant pressure to earn more, the way his mother always knew exactly how much was in our accounts. "You've been monitoring us," he said, "reading our emails, tracking our schedules." I was protecting the family. "You were protecting yourself." The doorbell rang. Everyone froze. "That'll be the FBI," Sloane said calmly. "I called them when the loan document appeared. Interstate wire fraud plus money laundering tends to interest them." The study door closed behind us with a sound like a verdict. Lorraine had herded everyone in here family pressed against bookcases. Standing room only. The safe now center stage on her mahogany desk. "This is a misunderstanding," she announced. but her voice had lost its command. "Ava has misinterpreted standard estate management. Stop." I placed the court order on top of the safe, pages aligned perfectly with its edges. "Everyone here deserves the truth." Daniel stood by the window, key ring in his hand, not the mythical safe key I'd invented, but his mother's house keys, the executor keys, all the symbols of trust she'd given him. He looked at them like they were contaminated. "Open it properly this time," I said. "Everything out where we can see it." The safe was already cracked from our earlier discovery, but now I lifted the lid fully, tilted it toward the room. My phone, still recording, sat next to Maya's laptop, which was screen recording everything. Sloane had her legal pad out, documenting. Inside, layered like sedimentary rock, the evidence first, the photocopies wire receipts to Beckett Community Heritage, Willow Ridge Charitable Home, Sunset Gardens Foundation, each initialed LB in blue ink, the same blue ink from the executor substitution form. "These are legitimate charities." Lorraine tried. Maya pulled up her screen. "No, they're not. Delaware shells, registered to P.O. boxes, all created within days of Helen's death." I lifted out the thumb drive, the one labeled "Grant Packets" in Lorraine's handwriting. "Should we look?" I asked the room. "That's private," Lorraine started. "Nothing about this is private anymore." I handed the drive to Maya, the files opened like nesting dolls, folders within folders, each estate labeled with a name and date: Henderson 2019, Parrish 2021, Chin 2022, Williams 2023, Montgomery 2024, and finally, Harding 2025. 6 estates, I said. How much total? Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. 14.7 million. Gasps from the aunts. Tripp actually stepped backward, hitting the bookshelf. "Now the velvet pouch," Daniel said quietly. He'd moved closer, drawn by the same horrified fascination that makes people stare at accidents. I opened it carefully. My grandmother's locket fell into my palm, still warm somehow, as if it remembered being worn. Under it, a single folded sheet of paper. "Read it," Madison said. Phone trained on me. "Out loud." Helen's handwriting, shaky but clear. "If you're reading this, someone I trusted wasn't careful. I knew Lorraine had plans for my money the day she asked about my executor choices. I knew she'd try when she started visiting during Ava's night shifts. I write this knowing I might not live to stop her, but trusting Ava will. The truth always surfaces. Love always wins. And receipts, properly kept, are better than any lock." She knew. Lorraine's composure finally cracked completely. "She knew and didn't. Didn't what make it easy for you." I pulled out the last item, my planted envelope. "This one's mine. Added Tuesday night when I returned the safe." I opened it slowly. Inside, a single sheet. "Opening this without my consent acknowledges possession of my property obtained through fraud. You set me up. You set yourself up. I just documented it." Sloane stood, legal pad in hand. "Mrs. Beckett, I'm serving you with a notice of removal as executor of the Harding estate, effective immediately. Also, a petition for surcharge, requiring personal repayment of all misappropriated funds." "You can't. The court already has." "Judge Hernandez signed it this morning." Maya's laptop chimed. "Bank compliance is on the video call. They need to confirm the freeze extension." The screen filled with a man in a suit, clearly unhappy about working on Thanksgiving. "This is Director Thompson from Crescent State Bank. We need verbal confirmation from all parties that the freeze on accounts ending in 3847, 9021, and 50634 remains in effect pending investigation." "Confirmed," Sloane said. "Mrs. Beckett, do you acknowledge receipt of the freeze order?" Lorraine looked around the room at her family seeing her exposed, at Daniel's devastation, at the cousins already stepping back like poverty might be contagious. "Mrs. Beckett." "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you. The freeze is extended indefinitely." "Oh, and Mrs. Beckett. The wire attempt at 9:04 this morning has been flagged for suspicious activity. You'll be hearing from our fraud department. The call ended. The room stayed silent. Then Daniel laughed sharp, bitter, nothing like his usual diplomatic chuckle. 14 million. You stole $14 million from dead people. I managed. You stole. He threw the keys on the desk. They landed with a clatter that made everyone flinch. From my wife's grandmother, from families, from trust. Everything I did was for this family. Everything you did was for yourself. He turned to me. How long have you known? Suspected since the funeral. Known for certain since the bank statements. And you didn't tell me? You forwarded my trust email to her. Remember. The shame on his face was complete. I thought I was helping. You were. Just not me. Cousin Tripp, drunk enough to be honest, pointed at the drive. Are we all going to prison? Not if you didn't know, Sloane said. But anyone who received money from these accounts will need to return it. I didn't receive anything, Madison protested. Your car? I asked. The one Lorraine bought you last Christmas. Madison's face went white. That was a gift. Purchased with stolen funds. It's called clawback. The aunts were already at the door, distancing themselves. The uncles muttered about lawyers, appointments, needing to leave. In 3 minutes, the room cleared except for Lorraine, Daniel, me, and my witnesses. You've destroyed everything, Lorraine said. No. You did that when you decided other people's money was yours to take. She reached for the locket, Helen's locket, but I closed my hand around it. That's mine, she said. Helen promised it to someone trustworthy. That's not you. Daniel picked up the court order, reading it properly for the first time. Criminal referral recommended. Jesus, Mom. Don't be dramatic. It's civil. Page 3. Sloane interrupted. Wire fraud is criminal. So is money laundering. Lorraine aged 10 years in 10 seconds. I need to call my lawyer. You should. Multiple lawyers. Probably. She stood, tried to summon dignity from somewhere. This isn't over. You're right, I said. There's still the FBI interview, the asset forfeiture, the other families filing suits, the IRS audit that's definitely coming, the Bar Association's interest in how you got that executor substitution notarized. Enough. But I wasn't done. I pulled up the ring footage on my phone, the clip of her trying to break into my apartment at 2:13 in the morning. And this, breaking and entering, on camera. She looked at the screen, at herself caught in the act, and something in her finally broke. Not dramatically, Lorraine wasn't built for dramatic collapses. Just a slow deflation, like watching a designer dress lose its shape. I was trying to preserve your lifestyle. I know. I turned the locket over, feeling its familiar weight. Helen told me something once. She said the difference between rich and wealthy is that rich is about having money, but wealthy is about being able to sleep at night. Lorraine left without another word. The sound of her heels on hardwood faded. Then the front door closed. Daniel sat in her abandoned chair. What happens now? Now the court distributes the estate properly. The other families get their money back. And you decide whether you're your mother's son or your own man. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. Can we fix this us? I don't know. Trust is like an estate once someone steals from it. Even if you get the money back, you always remember the theft. I picked up the safe, empty now except for its truth, light enough to carry alone. The room had emptied like a trauma bay after calling time of death swift, silent, everyone fleeing the scene. Only the truth remained, scattered across Lorraine's mahogany desk like evidence at a crime scene. Sloane gathered her papers, efficient and unsentimental. The court will appoint a new executor within 48 hours. The FBI will want to interview you Tuesday. I'll be there. She paused at the door. You did everything right. Documented. Stayed legal. Let them hang themselves. I'm a nurse, I said. We chart everything, especially when we smell decay. Maya packed her laptop, the flowcharts still glowing on screen. The other families, Henderson, Parrish, all of them, they'll get their money back because of you. Because of receipts. Helen was right about that. Daniel hadn't moved from his mother's chair, still holding the executor keys like evidence of his own complicity. The cousins' voices drifted from the driveway, Tripp already spinning the story. Madison probably deleting photos. Our name, Daniel said quietly. The Beckett name is destroyed. Names can be changed. Character can't. He stood, walked to the window where November light was already fading. She called me 20 minutes before you got here, begged me to stop you, said you were having a breakdown, that I should have you hospitalized. Were you going to? I thought about it. The admission hung between us. Then I remembered something. Last month, you saved a kid who'd OD'd, worked on him for 40 minutes when everyone else wanted to call it. You don't break. You just keep working until the truth shows itself. The truth always surfaces. Helen's words, Helen's life. I lifted the locket, opened its tiny clasp. Inside, a photo of Helen at 30, standing in front of the factory where she'd worked her first 12-hour shift. On the back, inscribed so small I needed to squint, work honest, sleep sound. I need to ask, Daniel said. Was there ever a key to the safe? No, just the combination. So you lied. I redirected, made her waste energy on something that didn't exist instead of destroying what did. He almost smiled. She taught me that trick. Create false urgencies to distract from real problems. Except my urgency was real. $2.6 million, scheduled to disappear at 9 o'clock this morning. From the kitchen, the smoke alarm chirped the turkey, forgotten in the chaos, finally announcing its cremation. Neither of us moved to stop it. What happens to us? Daniel asked. That depends. Can you live with knowing your mother's a thief? Can you testify against her if needed? Can you rebuild without the stolen money that built your life? Can you forgive me for not seeing it, for forwarding that email, for choosing comfort over questions? I don't know. Trust is like a safe. Once you know someone's tried to crack it, you change all the combinations. He nodded, picked up his coat. The house will be gone. The cars. Everything she leveraged. You're a lawyer. You'll work. Build something real. And you. I've got my shifts back starting Monday. The real job. The one where saving people actually means something. He left through the front door. I went out the back, carrying the empty safe because leaving it felt like abandoning evidence. In the driveway, Madison was crying into her phone about her car. Tripp was already at his BMW, probably racing to move assets before the clawback started. The aunts had fled like refugees from a scandal they'd pretend not to understand. Poor Lorraine, they'd say tomorrow. Who could have known? Everyone. Everyone could have known if they'd looked past the mahogany and pearls to the paper underneath. I drove home through empty holiday streets, the safe rattling in my trunk like old bones. At my apartment, everything was as I'd left it, cameras still recording, locks still secure, the truth still documented in triple-backed-up files. The court documents sat on my kitchen table next to Helen's letters, one pile representing justice, the other love, both equally necessary for what came next. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Patricia Henderson. The FBI told me you found my mother's money. Thank you. Then another. James Parrish here. You did what none of us could. God bless. By midnight, I'd heard from all 5 families. $14.7 million about to flow back to its rightful owners because I'd kept receipts, because Maya could read patterns, because Sloan knew which judges worked Thanksgiving week, because Helen had raised me to recognize that legacy isn't a name. It's receipts. I turned the locket over in my palm one more time, then clicked it shut. The safe sat empty on my table. Its purpose served. Tomorrow, the FBI would come. The lawyers would circle. The Beckett family would scatter like roaches when the lights come on. But tonight, in my small apartment with its reinforced locks and silent cameras, I sat with Helen's photo and her letters and the truth that had finally surfaced. The money would be returned. Lorraine would face justice. Daniel would either rebuild or crumble. The cousins would learn that borrowed wealth vanishes as fast as it appears. And I would go back to the ER on Monday, back to 12-hour shifts and real emergencies and the kind of saving that actually matters. Back to the work Helen had believed in, the life she'd built with her own hands, the wealth that let you sleep sound. I opened her final letter one more time, the one she'd hidden in the safe. If you're reading this, someone I trusted wasn't careful. I was careful. Helen, I said to the empty room. I was so damn careful. The locket caught the light, throwing small reflections across the ceiling like stars, or like receipts, properly kept, shining their truth into the dark. Legacy isn't a name, it's evidence, and I had more than enough of both. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story of justice and family betrayal resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Ava's situation? Let me know in the comments.